All right, last week when we left off, this is how far I got. I was able to get the camper fully skinned and primed, textured, and painted. This week I'm going to be working on the doorway. So I'm going to build a threshold, frame out the doorway, build a door, and get it installed. So let's get to it. All right, the first thing I wanted to do is get my license plate installed. And in Utah, if you have a trailer that wasn't bought from a company like Tractor Supply or Harbor Freight, one that was put together DIY, then you've got a couple of steps that it takes to get your tags and license. Because there's no VIN number on the trailer, what I needed to do was go pick up some forms from DMV, have a police officer come and inspect the trailer, make sure that there wasn't a VIN number on there, and he signed off on the form that I had. Then I took that back to DMV, showed him that. They issued me a VIN number and then another form, took that back, had the police officer come back, witnessed me installing the new VIN number on the trailer. He took a picture and filled out the form, said everything was okay. Then I took that back to DMV and they issued me a license plate. So after all that, I was able to get it installed, and that's what we're looking at now. Okay, first thing I need to do in the doorway is to build a threshold. And I've got this scrap piece of 2x4 that I'm going to carve up and turn into a threshold. So here you can see I just took this and on my table saw I started cutting away until I got a nice fit. And here I've got it dry fit, and it was just a tiny bit snug. I had to tap it with the hammer to get it in. That's exactly what I was hoping for. So I think I'm going to pull this out and prep it and then get it installed. So the first thing I wanted to do was treat my threshold using Shoshugi Bond. And here I've got it all nice and burned. I've already scraped off with the wire brush all of the ash residue. And at this point it's ready to be wiped down with a damp cloth, and when it dries I'll paint it black. Okay, so here I've got it painted and installed into the doorway, and looks like a pretty good fit. Next, what I want to do is get some angle iron and cut it to length and frame out the rest of the doorway. So I've got my two side angle iron pieces here, and just to dry fit now, what I'm going to do now that I know that it fits is I'll pull it out, I'll drill out my mounting holes and sand it down and paint it black and then get it installed. So here I've got the threshold mounted, and I've got a piece of flooring that I'm going to be using. It's 5/8 of an inch thick, and the threshold is where it meets up with the floor. It's 3/4 of an inch. So I butted that up just to see just how much of a lip that would have, and I think that's a pretty good distance. So I'm going to go with that. Okay, so I got my side angle iron painted and mounted, and now I need to work on that top piece. I'm going to have to cut a couple of 2-inch squares out of each side to create kind of some 2-inch wings to go over the top of the existing angle iron, and you'll see that here in a second. Okay, here you can see where I cut out a couple of squares, and what that is going to do is create those wings that will sit right on top of the existing aluminum door trim. Okay, so here I've got that piece. I got it pre-drilled, mounted, painted, and now it's installed. And I've got those screws that I'm using to mount it. Eventually, what I'm going to do is I'll remove those and I'll paint them black and get them reinstalled so that it looks nice. Okay, next it's time to work on the door. And I've got this scrap piece of plywood and some cutoffs from some 2x8s. And I'm going to use that to build a door. So I've got my rails and stiles all cut to size, and I've just got them sitting on top of the plywood right now. That's not going to be how I mount the door. I'm going to actually cut the plywood into 2 panels, and there'll be floating panels inside tongue and groove configuration. Okay, so here I've got my grooves cut on 2 of my rails, and I just wanted to throw that down with a scrap piece of plywood just to make sure that my grooves were the right width so that it would be a nice fit for the plywood. And it does fit perfect, so I'm going to go with that. And what I'll do is I'll finish cutting all of the grooves on the inside of each of my my 2x8s, and then on the ends of the rails I'm going to cut tongues so that it'll fit into the stiles and it'll make, you know, a nice door frame. Okay, here I've got all of my tongue and grooves cut, and I just did it on the table saw. Nothing, you know, no crazy tools were needed to build that. Just a couple of swipes down the table saw. I cut it at 3/4 of an inch deep, and so now all I need to do is cut my plywood and make a couple of panels out of it, and get those inside those grooves so that I've got floating panels. Okay, here you can see I've got those panels cut, and they're resting inside the grooves. It was a nice fit. I got my square out just so that I can make sure that my rails are nice and square to the stiles. And you can look down there at the bottom and you can see how the tongue and groove fits together. And here's just another view of the door, just sitting sideways. Okay, so again, I wanted to treat the door using Shoshugi bond. It's a very inexpensive and easy method. You know, there's a little bit of time into it, but it's really not bad. So I got the door completely burned and scraped with the brush. So what I'll need to do next is wipe it down to get all of the ash and dust off, and then I'll be able to paint it black. And here it is wiped down. You can see it's still a little bit wet on one end, but it'll dry pretty quick, and then I'll be able to put down some black paint. And I'm just going to paint the frame. I'm not going to paint the panels. I'm going to leave those as they are, and eventually what I'll do is I'll get some spar varathane and I'll coat, put a couple of coats all over the door. But I'm only going to paint the frame black. And here you can see what it looks like with the frame painted black and the panels left as they are. And I think once I get the VAR or spar varathane on, it'll look nice. Okay, so before mounting the door, I wanted to put a door stop around the inside of the door frame. So I've got that all installed, and just need to get it painted, and then I'll be able to dry fit my door. Okay, so I've got the door frame taped up and painted black. So as soon as that dries, I'll be able to dry fit the door and see how it looks. And there is the top. You can see that I did get those mounting screws painted black as well. All right, here I've got the door. It's just sitting in the doorway right now. It's just a dry fit, and it looks like it has a pretty good fit. So what I need to do now is I'll remove the tape, and then I'll look at getting the door mounted. Okay, there's the tape is all removed. Looks pretty good. I didn't get any overspray anywhere. So let me go ahead and get that door mounted. And here's just another look at that from a little further back so you can get a look at the whole trailer. Okay, so I got the door mounted now. I got 3 hinges, and they're kind of like barn door hinges, but I got those mounted. And same thing, I'll eventually paint those screws black so that it all blends in. But that's what the door looks like. And here's a shot of it on the other side, the inside of the door. So now I need to start working on the door latch. So I'm carving out a spot right there in the middle of the door where I can fit my door latch. And there's the door latch. Looks like it's going to fit pretty good. I'll go ahead and get that mounted, and then we can get the door rehung. Okay, I got the door rehung. The door latch is in place, and it's a good fit. All right, so I'm just using a regular strike plate for the door latch, and there's a piece that is bent inside the hole. What I did is I took that and I bent it out, and that's what I'm using for my latch. Okay, so here I've got the door in place. It's closed, latched, and looks like it's a pretty good fit. And here we've got another angle of that. A little bit close up, you can see where the door latch is latching up against the strike plate. And like I mentioned before, I will paint those screws that are holding the hinges in place. I'll paint those black. And one other thing that I did was I took some angle iron, painted it black, and I mounted it to the top and the bottom of the door just to give it some additional stability. And that's going to do it for this week's video. So stay tuned in the next video, and we'll continue to build out the camper. And until then, I'll talk to you guys later.